I stood in that grand ballroom, surrounded by people who pretended to care, but only lived for gossip. The air smelled of expensive cologne, fresh roses, and the kind of arrogance that filled the lungs of people who never tasted failure. My grip on the champagne glass tightened as I took another sip, not because I enjoyed the taste, but because it gave my hands something to do. I didn't belong here. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. But Olivia did. She was in her element, laughing too loudly, leaning in too closely, flashing the kind of smile that wasn't meant for a husband. I watched as she floated from one guest to another, touching arms, tilting her head at just the right angle, ensuring everyone saw her. She was the perfect hostess, the woman people admired, envied, and, I now realized, pitted. Because what kind of woman turns a man into a ghost when he's standing right beside her? I had put effort into tonight. I wore the charcoal gray suit she once loved. I even styled my hair the way she used to run her fingers through. I had hoped, God, I had hoped that tonight would remind us of who we were before everything turned to dust. That maybe, just maybe, she'd look at me like she used to. But from the moment we stepped into the ballroom, Olivia had already decided I was nothing more than a placeholder in her life. I told myself I was imagining things. That the way she turned her body away from me wasn't intentional. That the way she laughed at Marcus's joke, touching his wrist, was innocent. That when she clinked glasses with the group of women whispering in the corner, it had nothing to do with me. I was wrong. The moment she took the microphone, I knew. It started harmlessly, or at least, that's how she wanted it to seem. She thanked everyone for coming, flashing that radiant, camera-ready smile, her voice dripping with false warmth. She called out a few names, made a joke about her father's terrible dancing, then sighed dramatically, setting the audience up for her real performance. "Marriage," she said, swirling the wine in her glass. "It's a lot of work, isn't it?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, soft at first, like an unsure breeze testing the waters. I swallowed hard. I knew where this was going. Olivia turned slightly, locking eyes with me, and that was when I saw it. The glint in her eye. That twisted kind of pleasure. "Sometimes," she continued, "you marry a man and think, wow, I really hit the jackpot. But then, years go by, and suddenly, you're not so sure anymore." More laughter. This time, louder. I felt my stomach tighten, a slow burn rising in my chest. "You watch them let themselves go," she went on, her voice carrying that playful cruelty she had perfected over the years. "You try to be patient, tell yourself, it's okay, I can work with this. But at some point, ladies, don't we all just wonder, why do we have to keep up appearances while they get to turn into, well?" She let the sentence trail off, waving her hand toward me in an exaggerated gesture. I didn't move. More laughter. Louder now. I saw them. Our family, our friends, our colleagues. All watching, laughing, judging. I wondered if any of them saw what I saw. That this wasn't a joke. This wasn't harmless teasing between a married couple. This was a performance at my expense. And she was thriving. I should have walked away right then. Should have put my glass down, turned on my heel, and let her entertain the crowd without me. But I didn't. Because a part of me, the pathetic, hopeful part of me, was still waiting for her to stop, to turn it around, to make it right. Then she said it. She turned to her friends, gave them a knowing look, and with a slow sip of her wine, sighed dramatically. "You know, ladies, some of us just need a little more excitement in life." And that was it. The final nail in the coffin of a marriage I had spent years trying to salvage. The laughter swelled, but I wasn't hearing it anymore. My mind was sharp, clear, focused. The pain, the humiliation, the anger, it all condensed into something powerful. I straightened my tie, adjusted my cufflinks, and slowly set my glass down on the table beside me. Then, as Olivia basked in the attention, I took a step forward. I reached for the microphone, and the laughter died instantly. I could feel it, the shift. The air, once filled with amusement, now held something heavier. Olivia's expression faltered. I took my time, adjusting my grip on the microphone, letting the silence stretch. Then I turned to face them all, my voice steady, smooth. "Well," I said, "since we're all sharing tonight, Let me tell you something about my lovely wife." And just like that, the party was over. Silence. It stretched across the ballroom, suffocating and absolute. A moment ago, the air had been thick with laughter, with Olivia's smug confidence filling the space like expensive perfume. Now, the only sound was the faint clinking of ice in abandoned glasses, the quiet shuffle of a guest adjusting their stance, and the barely there hum of tension crackling between us. I let it linger. I wanted them to feel it. I wanted her to feel it. The weight of the moment pressed down on Olivia, and I saw it. The slow, creeping realization that she had lost control. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to laugh it off, but no words came. Her eyes darted across the room, scanning faces, searching for some lifeline. Someone who would step in and redirect this back into a joke. But no one spoke. I rolled the microphone between my fingers, taking my time. I wasn't going to rush this. "Olivia," I finally said, my voice even, my tone conversational. That was quite the speech. Someone in the back of the room cleared their throat. A nervous shuffle. I smiled. Not the kind I used to give her. The kind that sought approval. The kind that hoped for warmth in return. This was different. It wasn't a smile for her. It was a smile at her. "I mean, truly," I continued. "I don't think anyone could have said it better." I let my eyes sweep the room, making sure everyone was watching. Marriage is hard work. And when you invest so much time in someone, it's natural to wonder if you're getting a return on that investment. Olivia straightened slightly, her shoulders pulling back. A defense mechanism. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight, "maybe we should." I held up a hand, cutting her off. She had spoken enough. "Now, Olivia," I said, "since you've been so generous in sharing your thoughts about marriage, I think it's only fair I share a few of my own." I turned to the guests, my audience. I spotted her parents near the front, standing frozen like statues, their polite smiles now strained and forced. Her friends, the ones who had been laughing the loudest, suddenly looked anywhere but at me. Cowards. I looked back at Olivia, her face now carefully blank, her grip tightening on the wine glass. I tilted my head slightly, as if considering my next words. "You mentioned excitement, sweetheart. That sometimes a woman just needs a little more to keep things interesting." She swallowed. "But what happens when that excitement isn't just some harmless little fantasy?" I turned my gaze toward the crowd again. What happens when that excitement turns into secret meetings, hotel receipts, and text messages filled with things no married woman should be saying? A sharp inhale came from somewhere in the crowd. And then I said the words that cracked the foundation of this entire night. "You see, Olivia hasn't just been looking for excitement. She's been finding it. With my cousin, Marcus." The collective gasp that followed was deafening. Olivia staggered back, her wine glass slipping from her grasp and shattering against the floor. The ballroom erupted. Murmurs turned into outright whispers, heads whipping toward Marcus, who stood frozen near the back, his face drained of all color. Someone cursed under their breath. A few guests physically stepped away from him, as if betrayal was contagious. Olivia shook her head rapidly, her breath coming faster. "Daniel." "Don't," I said smoothly, holding up my hand again. "Not tonight." Marcus, the pathetic coward, looked ready to bolt. He wasn't as good at hiding his guilt as Olivia was. He made the mistake of looking at her, of letting his panic show. And just like that, the truth was written in their faces for everyone to see. I turned back to the crowd, making sure they were still with me. They were. Every single eye in that room was locked onto this train wreck, unable to look away. "Now, I know this might come as a shock," I continued, my voice laced with mock sympathy. "After all, Olivia is the perfect wife, isn't she? Always so put together, always the life of the party, the one who makes sure everyone is entertained." I let the silence stretch again before adding, "And Marcus? Well, I suppose he's been pretty entertained, too." Someone snorted, barely containing their amusement. I could hear hushed voices now, whispering rapidly, exchanging bits and pieces of speculation that would spread far beyond this room. Good. Let it spread. Olivia, now visibly shaking, took a shaky step toward me. "We should talk about this privately," she whispered, Her voice no longer filled with confidence, only desperation. Should we? I asked, arching an eyebrow. Because I don't remember getting that courtesy when you dragged me into your little stand-up routine tonight. Her jaw clenched. I saw it then. The shift from humiliation to anger. She wasn't sorry. Not for what she'd done. She was sorry she got caught. That was the difference between us. I took a deep breath, then pulled something from my jacket pocket. A folded stack of papers. I'd like to take this opportunity to make another announcement, I said, unfolding them slowly. Olivia's breath hitched. I've already filed for divorce, I continued, lifting the papers for the audience to see. In fact, Olivia, these are your copies. I thought it'd be fitting to hand them to you in front of everyone, just like how you so generously handed me your public humiliation tonight. Her face crumbled. The guests watched in stunned silence, their shock slowly morphing into something else, satisfaction. Because let's be honest, people love a scandal. I held the papers out to her. She didn't move. For the first time all night, Olivia had nothing to say. I nodded, taking that in. Then I simply dropped them at her feet. The ultimate metaphor. You can pick them up whenever you're ready, I said casually. Oh, and before I forget, our joint accounts? Already frozen. I took care of that this morning. A collective murmur rippled through the guests. Olivia's knees buckled slightly, her hands flying to her mouth. Marcus took the moment to disappear, slipping out through the side entrance like the spineless rat he was. I looked back at Olivia one last time, allowing myself the briefest moment of reflection. This was the woman I had given years of my life to. This was the woman I had fought for, sacrificed for. And now? She was nothing to me. I took a step back, turned, and walked away. The ballroom doors swung shut behind me, and with them, I left every single piece of my past behind. And I never looked back. I stepped out of that ballroom into the crisp night air, inhaling deeply, as if I had just come up for air after years of drowning. The silence outside felt so different from the suffocating hush inside. There, the silence had been heavy, laced with shock, humiliation, and judgment. Out here, it was freedom. For the first time in years, I felt light. I didn't need to turn back to know what was happening behind those doors. I could already picture it, Olivia scrambling to maintain what was left of her dignity, her carefully constructed social image now shattered beyond repair. Marcus? He was probably already halfway to his car, fleeing like the gutless coward he was. But I wasn't done yet. See, exposing Olivia's affair in front of everyone wasn't just about revenge, it was about control. I had spent years playing the fool, letting her dictate the rules of our marriage, allowing myself to shrink while she grew into the role of a woman who thought she was untouchable. Not anymore. She had spent the night laughing at me, believing I was powerless. What she didn't know was that while she had been busy planning my public humiliation, I had been planning something far greater. I had spent the past 3 months preparing for this moment, and Olivia was about to find out that when I walk away from something, I make damn sure I never have to look back. I knew, long before I had the evidence, before I saw the texts, before I traced the hotel receipts, before I pieced together the puzzle of her betrayal, I knew. Olivia had always been good at playing the perfect wife, but perfection is exhausting. And when someone gets too comfortable, they slip. The late nights, the sudden interest in personal space, the way she'd pick fights over nothing, just to storm out and clear her head, it was all so predictable. So I did what any man in my position would do. I waited. I let her think she was winning, that I was blind, oblivious, still hopelessly devoted. And while she was sneaking off to be with Marcus, I was quietly untangling myself from her web. First, I got my financials in order. I consulted my lawyer, privately. I moved every single dollar that was solely mine into accounts she couldn't touch. I adjusted my direct deposits, rerouted investments, and quietly took my name off anything she could try to use against me. Then, I froze our joint accounts, setting up automatic alerts on every transaction. I knew she'd notice eventually, but Olivia had a fatal flaw. She always assumed she was the smartest person in the room. So when she saw that she suddenly needed authorization to make large withdrawals, she probably dismissed it as a minor inconvenience, something she could deal with later, after one of her spa weekends. She had no idea I was starving her out. That's when I gathered the evidence. I didn't just want proof. I wanted irrefutable proof. The kind no amount of crying, gaslighting, or Olivia's fake remorse could erase. I went through phone records, hotel bookings, credit card statements. I hired a private investigator, someone who didn't ask unnecessary questions, someone who knew how to dig deep without being noticed. And of course, I found everything I needed. Photos, receipts, texts that made my stomach turn. The words Olivia had once whispered to me in bed, the ones that had made me believe I was the only man she could ever love. She had been copy-pasting them to my own cousin. I read every vile, shameless word, and instead of anger, I felt calm, because now, I had everything. With my lawyer's help, I filed for divorce. Not just any divorce, a divorce that left Olivia with nothing. See, Olivia had always insisted on a prenup, but not for the reasons you'd expect. She had wanted it because, at the time, I was the one with the money. She had been protecting herself, in case I ever stepped out of line. The irony? That same prenup was about to wreck her world. My lawyer made sure every loophole was closed. The minute I dropped those papers in front of her, she would realize just how thoroughly I had dismantled her future. She'd get nothing from me. Not the house. Not my assets. Not a damn penny. She'd have to rely on Marcus, a man who couldn't even stand beside her when things got messy. Good luck with that. As I drove away, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Olivia. 10 missed calls. I smirked, rolling down the window and letting the cool air wash over me. I wasn't answering. I had no interest in hearing whatever excuses she was about to throw my way. The woman who had stood in front of all those people, mocking me, humiliating me, treating me like a joke, she wasn't my problem anymore. I pulled up to my apartment, my new apartment, the one she didn't know about. No shared keys. No shared bed. No Olivia. I parked, leaned back in my seat, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I had thought walking away from Olivia would feel like a loss, that I'd carry some unbearable weight, some lingering heartache. Instead, I felt weightless. She had lost. Not just me. Everything. And the best part? She hadn't even seen the full extent of her downfall yet. Not until she woke up in the morning, reached for her bank account, and saw the big, fat zero staring back at her. Not until she realized that Marcus, the man she'd thrown everything away for, was gone. Not until the reality of her choices crashed down on her like a tsunami, leaving her with nothing but regret. And me? I'd be too far ahead to hear her screams. Checkmate, Olivia. I woke up the next morning in a bed that finally felt mine. No trace of Olivia's perfume lingering in the sheets. No designer pillows arranged in that overly staged way she insisted upon. Just a simple, clean space. Peaceful, uncluttered. And yet, as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up to dread. There were no silent battles waiting in the kitchen. No passive-aggressive sighs when I poured my coffee. No carefully curated coldness designed to make me question my own worth. There was just quiet, and I could breathe. I let myself enjoy that feeling before reaching for my phone, already expecting the damage control Olivia would attempt. I wasn't disappointed. 25 missed calls. 17 unread texts. I scrolled through them without emotion. We need to talk. What the hell, Daniel? This is not how a marriage ends. Pick up the phone. Now. You froze the accounts? Are you insane? I swear to God, if you don't answer me. I smirked. Oh, Olivia. So predictable. For years, she had made every decision in our marriage. She had controlled the narrative, controlled how people saw us, controlled me. Now, she had nothing to hold on to. I checked my bank app. All funds secure. The lawyer had confirmed the divorce papers were officially delivered last night. If she hadn't picked them up off the floor at the party, she would have seen them when she stumbled home to her empty reality. No money, no reputation, no backup plan. And the best part? I didn't care. For the first time in forever, I was thinking about me. I got up, stretched, and made myself breakfast. Something Olivia used to make me feel guilty for. You should just grab a smoothie, Daniel. You're not 25 anymore. You don't burn calories like you used to." She said it with a smile, of course. Everything Olivia did was coated in sweetness, but underneath, it was poison. Now, I cooked exactly what I wanted, piling my plate with eggs, toast, and bacon. A simple meal, but it tasted like freedom. As I ate, I grabbed a notepad. Time to make a list. Cancel the gym membership I never wanted. Olivia had signed me up for overpriced fitness classes with her trainer, claiming I'd thank her later. I never did. Buy a new car. She had always wanted me to drive something flashy. I just wanted something that got me where I needed to go. Find a hobby. Because for years, my only hobby had been trying to keep my marriage from falling apart. Reconnect with friends. The ones Olivia subtly pushed away because they weren't polished enough for our social circle. Each item on that list felt like a step toward the man I used to be, before Olivia molded me into someone who only existed to serve her needs. I was done with that. I was taking myself back. The first time I stepped out alone, truly alone, it felt strange. For so long, Olivia had been my shadow in public spaces, always polishing our image, making sure we looked like the perfect couple. Now, walking into my favorite cafe without her, I wondered if people would recognize me. If they'd look at me and think, "There's that guy Olivia humiliated at the party." But the truth? Nobody cared. The world kept turning. Life moved on. I ordered my coffee exactly the way I liked it, sat by the window, and for the first time in ages, I watched people instead of worrying about being watched. It was in that quiet moment, with a fresh cup in my hands, that I realized I was free. Not just from Olivia, from the version of myself I had become with her. The divorce became public knowledge quickly. When you expose a cheating wife at a ballroom event, people tend to talk. Some people rush to Olivia's defense, trying to rewrite history. Maybe Daniel wasn't the best husband. Maybe she had her reasons. Maybe they just grew apart. People love maybes when the truth is too ugly. But others? They saw what I saw. Friends I hadn't heard from in years reached out. "Man, we should have said something earlier. We knew she was toxic. Dude, it's like you were a different person when you were with her. You have no idea how happy I am for you." It was strange, hearing it from them, realizing that the person I had become in that marriage wasn't just in my head. They had seen it. They had watched me shrink under Olivia's expectations. And now, they were watching me grow again. I didn't just want to move on. I wanted to build something. So I took up something I had always wanted to do but never had time for: photography. It started small. A camera, a few books, hours of wandering around the city just capturing moments. There was something freeing about it. For years, my world had been scripted, staged. Every event with Olivia was about the right angles, the right lighting, the right audience. Now, I was learning to see life for what it was. The imperfections, the messy details, the realness. And it felt damn good. It happened weeks later. I was sitting on a park bench, flipping through the pictures I had taken that day. A woman sat down nearby, sipping a coffee, lost in her own thoughts. She wasn't stunning in an Olivia way, the kind of beauty that demands attention. She was warm, real, the kind of person you'd want to have a conversation with on a slow Sunday morning. For the first time in forever, I wasn't thinking about Olivia. I wasn't thinking about what I had lost, or what she had done to me. I was just present. She caught me looking, and I smiled. She smiled back. That was it. No grand realization, no dramatic moment of closure. Just a quiet understanding. I was free. I was finally, truly free. I used to think karma took its time, that it crept in silently, weaving through life in slow, patient threads, waiting for the right moment to strike. But for Olivia, karma came fast. It started the morning after the party. While I had woken up in a bed free of her presence, sipping coffee in a home that was finally mine, Olivia was waking up to a nightmare of her own making. Her first shock came when she checked her bank account. Zero. She must have thought it was a glitch, refreshing the page, checking the balance again. But it wasn't. It was real. The credit cards, declined. The savings account, locked. The emergency fund she thought she had access to, frozen under my name. And that was when the panic set in. I could imagine her pacing in the bedroom, phone in hand, her fingers trembling as she dialed my number over and over again. only to be met with silence. No answers. No explanations. Just the sudden realization that she had lost control. And that was only the beginning. The second blow landed on social media. The party had been filled with people who loved to gossip. People who thrived on secrets, on scandals, on stories that made their own lives seem less pathetic in comparison. Within hours of me walking out, whispers turned into full-fledged rumors. Did you hear? Olivia got caught cheating. At her own party. He exposed her in front of everyone. She didn't even see it coming. Daniel already filed for divorce. She's done for. Screenshots of texts, photos, and evidence from the affair started circulating online. Not by me, but by those who had been at the party. People who had smiled in Olivia's face for years, but didn't hesitate to tear her apart once she was down. Her perfectly curated social image? Destroyed. By noon, Olivia's name was trending locally. Not for her beauty, not for her fashion, not for her high-status social life, but for her humiliation. I stayed off my phone. I didn't need to read the comments to know what people were saying. But Olivia? She read every single one. And with each one, the reality of her downfall became clearer. Marcus? Gone. Olivia wasn't just dealing with the fallout from the party. She was also scrambling to hold on to Marcus. Because now that everyone knew the truth, she had no one left to hide behind. She called him first thing in the morning, expecting him to comfort her, to say they'd figure it out together. But Marcus? Marcus didn't pick up. Instead, he sent her a single text message. Marcus, this isn't going to work. Don't contact me again. That was it. No excuses. No grand declaration of love. Just cowardice. And that was when Olivia truly began to unravel. Because for the first time in her life, she was alone. Olivia had always been her father's favorite, the golden daughter who could do no wrong. But even he had limits. The morning after the party, Olivia's parents showed up at her house, their faces tired and disappointed. I wasn't there to hear the conversation, but I heard from mutual friends that it was brutal. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her father had demanded. How could you do this to your own husband? Her mother had whispered. Olivia had tried to defend herself. Of course she had. She had probably cried, insisting that I was the problem, that I hadn't been enough for her, that I had pushed her to this. But they weren't buying it anymore. Because the truth? It was too obvious to deny. She had betrayed her marriage. She had embarrassed herself. And now, she was paying the price. Her father left without another word. Her mother hugged her. But it wasn't warmth. It was pity. And for Olivia, that was worse than anything else. By the third day, Olivia was desperate. Her money was gone. Her family had distanced themselves. Her social circle? Silent. And so, she did the one thing I knew she would do. She tried to reach me. Again. And this time, I answered. Daniel? Her voice was shaky, a mix of anger, desperation, and something else, something fragile. I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pin between my fingers. Olivia, are you serious with this? Freezing the accounts? You can't do that. I can, I said calmly. And I did. She exhaled sharply, probably pacing the room, trying to regain control of the conversation. Look, she said, shifting tactics. We don't have to do this like enemies. We were married for years. You should have thought about that before you humiliated me at the party. I cut in, my voice cool. Silence. Then, quietly, she whispered, I didn't think you'd actually leave me. And there it was. The truth. She had never thought I'd walk away. She had expected me to stay, to be the fool, to be her safety net. I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to sit with it, to feel it. Then I spoke. You did this to yourself, Olivia. Her breath hitched. I heard it. Please, she whispered. Just let's talk. Let's figure something out. And maybe in another life, in another version of me, the weaker version, I would have listened. But I wasn't that man anymore. There's nothing left to figure out, I said. You made your choices. A pause. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, is there someone else? I smirked. Not because there was, but because for the first time, she was afraid. Afraid that I had moved on. Afraid that she had truly lost me. You don't get to ask me that, I said simply. And then, before she could say another word, I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to her. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Olivia tried to rebuild herself, but without money, without connections, and with a reputation that was in ruins, she had no foundation left. She lost the house. She burned through whatever little money she had left. She moved into a small apartment, far from the luxury she was used to. And Marcus? Marcus never spoke to her again. Olivia had spent years believing she was untouchable, but in the end, she was just like everyone else. And I was already too far ahead to see her fall. It had been months since I had last spoken to Olivia, months since the party, since the phone calls I ignored, since she begged me to work things out, when what she really meant was undo the consequences of her own choices. I had moved forward. I had built something new, a life that didn't have her shadow cast over it. And yet, as I stood outside my old house, the house I once called home, I felt a strange stillness settle over me. Not pain, not regret, just finality. Because today was the last time Olivia and I would ever see each other. I had debated whether or not to come. I had no reason to see her again, no lingering emotions that needed closure. My life had already moved past her, but my lawyer had called me the week before. She requested a final in-person meeting before signing the last set of papers. It's your choice, but I'd advise against it. I had laughed at that. Why? Afraid she'll manipulate me? A pause. Then, she's desperate, Daniel, and desperate people don't play fair. I had agreed anyway, not because I owed her anything, but because I wanted to see her face when she realized just how far I had left her behind. So here I was, standing in front of a woman I once loved, waiting to hear whatever excuse or lie she had planned. She opened the door, looking different from the last time I saw her. Not in the way I had expected. She still had that polished look, still wore expensive perfume, still held herself as if she was better than everyone else. But something had changed. She looked smaller, diminished, like someone who had spent too long trying to pretend everything was fine while her world fell apart around her. Daniel, she said, her voice softer than I remembered, almost careful. Come in. I didn't move. I'll stay here. Her lips pressed together. Fine. She stepped onto the porch, folding her arms, her gaze searching mine, like she was still looking for the man who used to worship her. She wasn't going to find him, she sighed, shifting her stance, probably trying to find the right words to get what she wanted. I made mistakes, she said finally. I was selfish. I see that now. I arched a brow. Do you? She swallowed. Yes. I waited. I knew Olivia. If there was one thing she had mastered, it was manipulation through performance. This wasn't an apology. It was the setup. The real request was coming. She exhaled sharply, brushing her hair back like she was exasperated that I wasn't making this easy for her. I lost everything, Daniel. She shook her head. I never thought things would end up like this. I didn't reply. She bit her lip, the way she used to when she wanted me to comfort her. But I felt nothing. You don't have to forgive me, she continued. But maybe we could start over. As friends. Or at least. She hesitated. I just need some help getting back on my feet. There it was. I let her words sit between us, absorbing them slowly. You want my help? I asked, my tone unreadable. She nodded quickly, eyes filled with false hope. Just until I figure things out. You always said I was the love of your life. Doesn't that count for something? I let out a soft chuckle. I think that's what finally shook her. Not anger. Not resentment. Just amusement. Olivia, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I meant it when I said I loved you. But that man? The one who would have done anything for you? I took a step back. He doesn't exist anymore. Her face paled. Daniel. I gave you everything, I continued, my voice calm, steady, and you threw it away. So no, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to fix what you broke. And I'm definitely not going to pretend that any of this was some tragic misunderstanding. Her eyes filled with desperation now, real and raw. Please, I don't have anyone else. Not my problem. I shook my head. That's not my burden to carry anymore. She took a shaky breath, like she was about to cry, but I knew better. Olivia's tears were never for anyone but herself. You said you'd always be there for me, she whispered. I gave her a slow, knowing smile. I lied. And with that, I turned and walked away. For the last time, I expected to feel something as I drove away. Regret, sadness, nostalgia. But all I felt was relief. That part of my life was finally over. I didn't have to wonder if she'd call. I didn't have to doubt my choices. I didn't have to carry the weight of her manipulations anymore. It was done. And in that moment, with the sun setting in my rearview mirror, I realized something. I wasn't just moving on. I was free. That night, as I sat on my balcony, sipping a beer and staring at the city lights, my phone buzzed. Not Olivia. Natalie. I smiled before I even answered. Hey, she said softly. How did it go? I leaned back in my chair, the tension in my chest completely gone. It went exactly how it was supposed to. She hesitated, then asked the question neither of us had spoken aloud before. Do you think you're ready now? I knew what she meant. Ready to stop looking over my shoulder. Ready to trust again. Ready to step into something real without fear of the past repeating itself. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I smiled. Yeah, I said. I think I am. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. Winning doesn't always come with applause. There are no flashing lights, no dramatic moments where the universe stops to acknowledge your triumph. Sometimes, victory is quiet. Sometimes, it looks like waking up and not feeling the weight of the past on your chest. Sometimes, it looks like a cup of coffee, a sunrise, and knowing you have no one to answer to but yourself. That's what victory felt like for me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And for the first time, I was excited for what came next. After my last conversation with Olivia, something inside me fully clicked into place. I had spent so much time reacting to the past, healing from it, untangling myself from everything she had done to me. But now, I was ready to build. Not from a place of anger, not from a place of pain, but from a place of pure, unapologetic joy. I threw myself into my photography, not as an escape, but as a pursuit. I started taking on projects, shooting for local businesses, capturing portraits, telling stories through my lens. It wasn't just about taking pictures, it was about seeing life differently. For so long, I had been living in someone else's frame, forced to view the world through Olivia's carefully curated lens of perfection. Now, I got to choose my own angles. And every shot I took reminded me that the world was bigger than the life I had left behind. Natalie wasn't the reason I healed. I had done that work myself, but she was the first person in years who didn't make me feel like I had to earn my worth. She didn't push. She didn't rush. She just showed up. Some days, she'd meet me for coffee. Other days, she'd send me a random photo she took on her phone, captioning it, "Would this impress the photography guy?" And on the nights when I found myself staring at old scars, not because they hurt, but because I needed to remember where I had come from, she never tried to fix me. She just sat beside me. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a new relationship. This was something different, something real, and I wasn't afraid of it anymore. A few months after our last conversation, Olivia tried to reach out one final time. Not through a call, not through a text, but through a mutual acquaintance who just happened to mention that she regretted everything, that she missed me, that she hoped I was happy. For a moment, I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, but because it no longer mattered. Once upon a time, those words would have been my oxygen. I would have dissected them, obsessed over them, wondered if they meant there was still hope. But now, I didn't care. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt nothing. And that was the moment I knew I had one. Not because I had hurt her, not because she had lost everything, but because she no longer had any control over me. I stood at the edge of a quiet beach, camera in hand, watching the waves crash against the shore. Natalie stood beside me, her arms wrapped around herself, the wind tugging at her hair. "Take a picture," she said, nudging me. I smiled. "Of what?" "Of this," she said, motioning toward the ocean. "This moment." I looked at her instead. "You take it." She raised an eyebrow. "Me?" I handed her the camera. Yeah, show me what you see. She hesitated for a second, then lifted the camera, clicking the shutter. When she handed it back to me, I checked the screen. She had taken a picture of our shadows in the sand, side by side, intertwined, the ocean behind us. I stared at it for a long moment, because I finally understood. For so long, I had been rebuilding, but now, I was simply living. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I didn't win because I destroyed Olivia. I didn't win because I moved on first. I won because I chose myself, because I stopped letting the past define me, because I stopped waiting for closure that would never come, because I let myself love again, not out of desperation, but because I finally knew what real love was. And the best part? This was just the beginning.